You have osteoporosis. Now what? Join me for this video series where I share that yes, this can be a very, very scary diagnosis that you have to take seriously, but you don't have to go wrapping yourself in bubble wrap. Hey, it's Amy from Be Healthy Enough. I help women over 50 get moving even as the aches and pains of age start to creep in with online workouts designed for just what we need that will leave you feeling good, not beat up, so you can be healthy enough to do all the things that you want to do in life. Please don't leave if you don't have osteoporosis because everything I talk about will be of benefit if you're over 50. Osteoporosis is a major health concern today, and it can be life-altering. 1 out of 2 women and 1 out of 4 men over 50 are at risk for osteoporosis and will have a fracture. Osteoporosis is often called the silent disease because we don't feel it until we break a bone, and that can be the life-altering part. Before we get started, make sure you hit subscribe so you get notified when the next video of this series comes out. And at the end, give it a like if you liked this information so I know to share more of it. And before we get started, another thing, we're going to practice good bone health. One of the number one things we should do for good bone health is to keep our nice posture. So right now, wherever you're watching this, I want you to sit up nice and tall, feet flat on the floor, bring your shoulders up, back and down. Feel that nice opening up of your chest. Keep that throughout this entire video. Also, don't be looking down at me while you're watching this. That forward head posture is not only super bad for your upper spine and posture, it can cause neck wrinkles, and we don't want that. So keep that nice posture throughout this entire video. I'm going to start the presentation now. I'm going old school. I created a PowerPoint presentation like I used to do back in my HP days. So hang on, I'm going to take you over there right now. Here we go. Oh, wait, before we get started, do you have osteoporosis? Have you been diagnosed with osteoporosis or even osteopenia right now? Osteopenia is just the start of low bone density. Let me know in the comments below, okay? By the end of this entire series, I hope that you get a good understanding of why bone health matters to you over 50 and that you know how to keep your bones strong with the overlying goal of reducing fractures. That's what we're trying to do throughout this entire over 50 journey, okay? We don't want to have a fracture because that can be life-altering. In this video number 1, I'm going to cover what the disease of osteoporosis is, why it's so scary, what caused it, and your risk factors if you don't have it. In video number 2, I'm going to talk about what you can do to prevent any further bone loss. We want to keep the bone mineral density that you already have. And then in the last one, my favorite one, I'm going to share what I've learned as an osteoporosis fitness specialist on how to create a more resilient body to protect those very delicate bones. Remember, throughout all of this, I am not a doctor. I am a certified osteoporosis fitness specialist and menopause fitness specialist. So make sure you consult with your doctor on trying anything that I'm recommending. And stay tuned to the very end of this series because I have a gift for you. Let's move on to our next slide. Osteoporosis is a disease. Healthy bone on the left here is strong. It holds us up. It protects our internal organs. When the muscles contract and relax, the bones help us move around. When we lose our bone mineral density, our structure becomes weak, as you can see over here, and unable to take our normal weight, leaving the bones easily breakable. You can see the picture on the right. Hopefully you can see that it's thinner, and in some places it's not even connected. People with osteoporosis can break a bone from a minor fall, and if it's a serious case of osteoporosis, even the simple actions of sneezing or bumping into furniture can cause a break. 70% of people over 65 have osteoporosis and they don't even know it. 10 million Americans have osteoporosis and another 44 million have lower bone density or the start of osteopenia and are at a risk for a fracture. The disease is responsible for 2 million bone fractures per year. Let that sink in. I know it sounds like I'm trying to scare you, and I guess I am. I just want you to take this very seriously because often you don't feel any different until you break a bone. But the reason I'm here is I want you to understand life isn't over. You just have to do things a little differently. Okay, I'm going to get a little sciencey on you so you understand that bone is a living tissue. It's easy to think of bones as this hard, lifeless part of our body, like the dogs chew on their bones, but bone is a living, growing tissue with old bone being removed and replaced with new bone all the time. In this picture, you see the word osteoblast, which means builds bones, where osteoclast eats bones so it can be reshaped and rebuilt into a stronger, more resilient load-bearing structure. The coordinated action of the osteoblasts and osteoclasts is what's known as bone remodeling. Bone remodeling also takes care of regulating minerals such as calcium and phosphorus in our bones. Because of this process called remodeling, the bones that you have now are not the same as ones you had 7 to 10 years ago, and they're not going to be the ones you have in 7 to 10 years. And this is good news in that the work you do now to improve this remodeling process could help you improve weaker bones. I'm going to explain more of that in a little bit. In healthy bones, the osteoblast and osteoclast is balanced. Our bones become thinner and more fragile when this remodel becomes unbalanced. In other words, when removing bones happens faster than replacing bones. Does that make sense? Let me share why and when this remodeling becomes unbalanced. This is the life cycle of your skeleton. Throughout childhood, the osteoblasts or bone-forming cells are working faster than the osteoclasts or cells that are breaking down the bone. The skeleton during this time grows really rapidly during the teen years. I remember I grew from 5'2" to 5'8" from 6th grade to the end of 9th grade, and I used to get Charlie horses because I think my bones were growing way too fast right then. Once we hit 30, or peak around 30, about peak bone mass, the remodeling process is balanced. The osteoblasts and osteoclasts are working at the same pace, and bone mass stays relatively stable until around menopause. Because of the decrease in estrogen, the osteoblasts do not keep up with the osteoclasts, and there's a rapid period of bone loss. During the 5 years around menopause, women can lose up to 25 to 30% of their bone mass. Men continue to lose bone density at a steady and slower rate than women until about age 70, when their hormones start to reduce. They could see some rapid bone loss. Some important takeaways I really want you to make sure you're preaching to your kids and grandkids is that the younger ones need to be building up as much bone density as possible during that rapid bone building period. It's like a bank account. So when we hit our 50s, we have more bone to pull from. Now let's share the risk factors. I'm going back to my computer. I'm going to spend just a minute talking about risk factors, especially for those of you who have not been diagnosed with osteoporosis yet. This can give you an indication of if you need to be taking preventative measures sooner than later. For those of you who have osteoporosis, I thought this was really interesting, at least for me, to understand why I was diagnosed with osteopenia younger than I thought I should be, okay? There are risk factors, things that you cannot change, and there are some that you can change. I'll talk about those in a minute. One of the biggest risk factors you can't change is your gender. 80% of those who have osteoporosis are women. Women have a higher risk than men because of our estrogen levels dropping as we age. About 65% of bone health can be attributed to heredity. Osteoporosis can occur in all races and ethnicities, but in general, studies find that Caucasians, me, especially of Northern European descent, me, and Asians are at increased risk, mainly due from what I saw because of calcium consumption, possibly lactose intolerance, so they can't consume calcium, or frame size. If your mother or father had osteoporosis, you are also at a higher risk yourself. Men and women who have a smaller frame tend to have a higher risk because they have less bone mass to draw from as they age. If your wrist size is less than 6.5 inches, you have a small frame. That's me. We can't change our age, although I'm trying. The older you get, the greater your risk for osteoporosis. When women start menopause or perimenopause, their levels of estrogen drop and some other hormones as well. Because estrogen is the hormone that helps maintain bone density, this drop can lead to significant loss of bone, as I mentioned before, okay? Finally, there are a number of medical conditions and then some medications that can affect your bones. I'm going to show you some of the most common ones of these in a second. We can't change these risk factors, but it's important that you are aware of them so you can take extra steps to minimize their impact. By the way, have you taken my osteoporosis risk assessment yet? I'll leave the link to that below. The good news, there are risk factors that you can change. The first one is making sure you're getting enough calcium and vitamin D. The right type of physical activity, which I'll talk about in another video. Quit smoking, limit your alcohol consumption and caffeine consumption, and then make sure your body weight is appropriate. And by appropriate, I mean not too thin. Yes, you can be too thin. There are also some medications that might affect your bones. It's important for you to talk to your doctor or pharmacist about those. Real quick, these are the medical conditions I learned that can cause bone loss. Read through these very quickly. If you're diagnosed with any of these, just make sure you're talking to your doctor about prevention strategies for bone health as well, okay? There are several medications that also impact bone health. A steroid or like prednisone is one of the most common ones. So if you're taking any of these or you start a new medication, always talk to your doctor about how it affects your bone health. I reviewed some of the things that can put you at risk, and there are also some signs that you might already have reduced bone mineral density. Early stage signs are brittle nails. The most common reason for brittle nails are hormonal changes and nutrition. Women who are going through menopause have fluctuating levels of estrogen all the time until it finally goes away. And on top of causing dry skin or thinning hair, this can also affect your nail strength. And that may be a sign of early bone loss. Receding gums. Bone health is directly related to oral and dental health. After all, 99% of the calcium in your body is in your bones and your teeth. Weak grip strength could also be an early sign, and I couldn't find much information that made sense to me and why this happens, but I did find a study showing a strong correlation, so something to think about. The most common signs of later stages of osteoporosis is a bone fracture from a fall. Sadly, many people break a bone and that's how they find out they have osteoporosis. A bump that they wouldn't think twice about a couple years ago was enough to cause a break or a fracture. Also, another sign is that you're shrinking, okay? That's a chance. It's not age related. Well, normally we do shrink a little bit as we age, as gravity pulls us down, but too much height loss can also be a warning sign that you've got a vertebral fracture. It is not uncommon for people to have back pain and then go to the doctor and realize they have osteoporosis because they have fractures in their spine. Recommend every time you go to the doctor on their fancy height equipment, make sure you're getting your height measured so that you don't have more than 1.5 inches of height loss, okay? Stooped posture can also be a sign because that may mean that you've got some compression fractures in your upper spine, okay, which are signs of weak bones. The only way to know for sure that you have osteoporosis or osteopenia is to get tested. This is the gold standard, the bone mineral density test, or what they call the DEXA scan. This test measures the amount of bone density in your spine and your hip. It's super simple and painless. It takes about 15 minutes. I had one done 2 years ago. This is what I learned about the coverage benefits for my location. If you're younger and have just one of the risk factors I talked about, you should talk to your doctor about ordering this test. I had several risk factors: race, heredity. My mom had osteoporosis, a small frame, and then I was in menopause. And at 57, I asked my doctor and she said, well, your insurance doesn't pay for it. So I went and I paid for it myself. It wasn't that expensive. And I'm so glad I did because it told me that I have osteopenia at 57. I never knew. I was strong. I was worked out with weights. I used to be a runner. But yes, I have the beginning signs of osteopenia. And this was super great because it motivated me to do things a little bit different. It gave me my why. And if you want to know more about what this why means, you just let me know in the comments below. Now you know all about low bone density, what it is, what problems it can cause, and how to diagnose it. To know more, you'll have to watch my next video to understand how to stay healthy enough to do all the things that you want to do in life. I call them my 3 pillars of action. The first pillar is to prevent further bone loss, and I'm going to talk about that in video number 2. The next that's video number 2. The next pillar is to become more resilient to weaker bones, and that's going to be in video number 3. The last pillar is to possibly reduce bone loss. But I am not qualified to speak about this, so please talk to your doctor. I've heard there's some good options. I just did an office hours with my members of the Be Healthy Enough Digital Fitness Studio, and several of them have been on some of these new medications and have seen some reversal of bone loss. That's it for this video. Make sure you give me a thumbs up if you liked what I shared. It helps me understand if I'm providing value. Also, stay tuned for the next video all about preventing further bone loss. If you have any questions, just leave me a comment or reach out. I'll leave my contact information in the description below. Have a great day.